Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I think before adding my 2 cents worth here this afternoon, I'd like to congratulate certainly the Bethesda School Heritage Foundation for doing two things I find very important. The first is, of course, recognizing May 29th as an important day not only in the Antiguan calendar, but an important day in the Caribbean calendar. The day when the first school dedicated to the education of the enslaved children and adults started. Secondly, I congratulate the foundation for its recognition of the lives and contributions of the persons honored here today. You know, I wish to join a tradition that I am noting is becoming entrenched in celebrations of this sort. And I ask you in the audience to join me in honoring the persons chosen by the foundation by proclaiming their names loud and clear. And so I ask you to join me in repeating the names after I call them. Miss Agatha Samuel.
Miss Agatha Samuel.
Reverend Lucia Baltimore.
Reverend Lucia Baltimore.
Reverend Elman Joseph.
Reverend Elman Joseph.
Mr. John Archibald.
Mr. John Archibald.
Mr. Harold Carter.
Mr. Harold Carter.
Thank you. And I would like to thank Brother Bowen for inviting me here today. It is an honor I will cherish. However, if I had visions of a lengthy speech and brilliant elocution, they were quickly dashed when Brother Bowen suggested that on an occasion like this, I get up, I speak up as quickly as possible, and sit down. Now, out of my respect for him and the elders in the audience, I will do just that. But before going on, I see why he wanted all the time for himself. But as my friend, as my colleague, and I think, however, in all of this, that I'm allowed to make some observations about this celebration. I promised Brother Ralph that I would not attempt, and quite correctly so, I would not attempt as a town man to get into Bethesda business, Bethesda school business. And I see that there is absolutely no need for me to do so because he has clearly covered that aspect of the celebration very carefully. I know that this event is backgrounded as the Vigo Blake Day in recognition of his vision to construct a school in this area in 1813. 1813, let's say that's about what, 140 years after the first Africans were kidnapped, enslaved, and brought to these shores. That is 140 years before any serious attention is paid to the transfer of formal knowledge to the enslaved through a systematic process. I see the celebration, in addition to the stated objectives of the Bethesda community group, as a celebration of the history of a people, our ancestors, who had serious knowledge of life and who had serious knowledge of survival. That is why we are here today. They came from civilizations that provided knowledge to the world. It is on the continent of our forefathers and our foremothers that all sciences were born, the mathematics and the medicine and the astrology and the astronomy, and we can continue calling them. Knowledge that transformed the human existence. It was there that the arts, humanities found origin in art, in religion, in philosophy, in literature. And let us please use the education that we have attained to dismiss cruel representations of our people time and time again, including one that suggests to us that the transmission of knowledge on the continent was oral. It was only through the word of mouth. Today, we know for a fact that there are records of at least 20 writing systems existing on the continent. Our ancestors came from a continent that knew the value of education, formal and informal education. And so I see the work of Baba Vigo and his fellow men, not only as an effort in formal education, but a major contribution to the resistance of our ancestors to enslavement. I see his effort as part of a process to regain the humanity of his African family, a humanity that those with military might and social and political power attempted to shackle and whip out of us. I see his effort and those of his fellow builders as part of the process of the establishment of a platform for what we now consider and name national development, because education is the basis for that. We tend to give praise to those who led frontal assaults on the systems of oppression, on enslavement. And in doing so, I think we run the risk of ignoring the contributions to freedom of many others, those who ran away, those who feigned illness, those who poisoned food and poisoned water systems, those who found burnt crops and found dozens of other ways to force disruptions to the system of economic exploitation of the labor of the enslaved. It was not always only weapons and pickets and marches. Providing a physical space was part of the effort to regain our rightful place as educators in this world. I also find interesting the main recitation material of the Bethesda School was hymns, and the main reading material was the Bible. I find this interesting because it is there. It is in the enslaver's own religious doctrines that we find multiple calls for justice to our fellow men and judgment on those who committed crimes against humanity. I certainly do not profess to be a biblical scholar. I think that knowledge lies elsewhere in my family. But Psalm 89 is clear that justice and judgment are the habitation of God's throne. Mercy and truth shall go before thy face, the psalmist says. Proverbs reminds us that to do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. It is there in words like this that the concepts of reparations that we preach from the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission, it is there in words like this that the concept of reparations are clearly entrenched. I know I was not invited here to be contentious, but I heard a wider recognition and appreciation of the efforts of ancestors like Baba Vigo and the realities of the period we lived in. I think we have to, as acceptors and receivers of education over the years, I think that we need to deconstruct our thinking and in many ways deconstruct our language. And I was very, very pleased to hear Brother Ralph do that quite on a number of occasions in his opening remarks. We have to stop describing ourselves in the thinking of the enslavers. We have to realize that our ancestors were not naturally born slaves, that they were enslaved, that terms like, and I was reading a piece quite recently that says that our ancestors were allowed to roam freely. Terms like this have serious connotations of animal imagery. We understand also that the ancestors we talk about did not just build a school in their spare time. What we are talking about is building a school after laboring for free for all their lives on the plantations. And that a debt is owed to them and therefore to us. And it is that unpaid labor that backgrounds our call for reparations. We name him Vigo Blake because he was enslaved on the plantation of an enslaver named Blake. To me, that is not good enough. Every time we give praise to him, we give praise to the name Blake, the plantation owner. And to draw a parallel to a grave injustice that we presently perpetuate in ourselves, a few weeks ago, students from one of our leading secondary schools showed athletic supremacy at the Carifta Games in Jamaica. And every time we gave praise to them, we were forced to give praise to who many considered as an alcoholic royal. I'm talking of the Princess Margaret School. We need to know more about the human Vigo. We need to humanize him as he attempted to humanize his fellow man, especially the children of the period. I think we also need to understand that we build national cultural confidence through understanding community effort and not only singular individual effort. It is with this thinking in mind that I applaud the efforts of those who contribute to our Hero Days activity, and we recognize not only King Court, but also Tomboy and Hercules and Jack and the 87 others who were mercilessly executed for attempting to take control of this island back in the 1730s. Likewise, I give much praise to the National Parks Authority and the staff there for them extending the recognition of the contributions of the named enslaved workers in the dockyard, Billy, London, James Coe, Caramanti, Kumono, Dick, Joe, Scipio, and Jono, who perished in an explosion on the 8th of March, 1744. I praise them, the parks, for extending that recognition to the 400 Africans and African Creoles who toiled on the dockyard, and by extension, those who toiled to build the courthouse there, and Shirley Heights, and the government house, and Clarence House, etc., and the estate houses all around. I think that these are two marvelous examples here in Antigua and Barbuda of progressive commemoration and celebration of our African heritage. And I urge the Bethesda School Heritage Foundation to take view at those two particular approaches, that we see this and we see this celebration essentially as the work of a community, although we are in a position to perhaps identify a leader of it. And so I not only join with, but congratulate the foundation in recognizing that we build cultural confidence through understanding community and not necessarily only individual effort. I say thanks for the invitation and offer congratulations to the honorees here this afternoon. And I also offer encouragement to those who have undertaken the arduous task of detailing our history and urge them to detailed and accurate accounting. I thank you very much.